Imagine for a moment it's 1871. The American West is still a vast, largely uncharted territory, a land of myth and legend. Whispers travel back east, tales from rugged mountain men about a place where the earth breathes fire, where water explodes into the sky, and where the ground itself is painted in colors you can't even imagine. To most, these were just tall tales, campfire stories to spook greenhorns. But to a handful of brilliant, ambitious minds, they were a siren song, a call to adventure in the name of science. This is the story of the first scientific expedition into the land we now call Yellowstone, and how it forever changed our understanding of the planet. At the heart of this daring venture was Ferdinand V. Hayden, a geologist with an insatiable curiosity and a knack for organizing expeditions. He wasn't just a rockhound. He was a visionary who understood that the American West held clues to the very formation of our world. He assembled a dream team for what would become known as the Hayden Geological Survey of 1871. This wasn't a group of fortune seekers. It was a carefully selected band of topographers, botanists, zoologists, and artists. Among them were the photographer William Henry Jackson and the painter Thomas Moran, men whose job was to capture the unbelievable and make it believable for a skeptical public. Their mission? To replace myth with fact, to map the unmappable, and to unravel the geological secrets of this strange, hellish landscape. They loaded up their mules with scientific instruments, survey equipment, and enough provisions to last for months, and set off into the complete unknown. They were literally stepping off the edge of the map. As the expedition pushed deeper into the Wyoming territory, the familiar landscapes of plains and mountains began to transform. The air itself started to change. A sharp, pungent smell, like a million burnt matches, began to fill their lungs. It was the unmistakable scent of sulfur, a chemical whisper from the earth's molten core. The ground beneath their horses' hooves became increasingly strange, hot to the touch in places and stained with bizarre, vibrant colors. Imagine their state of mind. These were trained geologists, men who had dedicated their lives to understanding the predictable, orderly processes of the earth. But this was something else entirely. The sensory overload must have been staggering. The constant low rumble that seemed to vibrate up through the soles of their boots, the hiss of steam escaping from unseen cracks in the ground, the kaleidoscopic mineral deposits painting the landscape in shades of orange, yellow, and turquoise. This wasn't just pretty scenery. It was a geological enigma on a scale they had never conceived. Every law of nature they had studied seemed to be breaking right before their eyes. The landscape was alive, and it felt both magnificent and menacing. One afternoon, while scouting ahead, the team heard a noise unlike any they had ever encountered. It wasn't the roar of a waterfall or the crash of thunder. It was a deep guttural groaning from the earth itself, growing louder and louder. They spurred their horses forward, drawn by a mix of fear and an irresistible scientific curiosity. And then, they saw it. A massive column of boiling water, impossibly high, shot into the sky with a powerful roar, shimmering in the afternoon sun before collapsing back onto itself in a cloud of steam. They had just become the first scientists to witness the eruption of the geyser they would name Old Faithful. Think about that moment. For these men, it wasn't just a spectacle. It was a profound scientific puzzle. What force could possibly heat that much water to boiling, and then eject it with such astonishing power and regularity? It defied their textbooks. It challenged their fundamental understanding of hydrology and volcanology. Standing there, soaked by the geyser's misty fallout, they weren't just observers. They were witnesses to a primal force of nature that had, until that moment, existed only in rumors. The discoveries came one after another, each more bewildering than the last. They stumbled upon the Mammoth Hot Springs, a series of what looked like frozen waterfalls, but made of gleaming white travertine rock, sculpted over millennia by hot, mineral-rich water. It was like something from a fantasy novel, an alien palace built by unseen hands. Then, they reached the Midway Geyser Basin and stood on the edge of the Grand Prismatic Spring. I can only imagine the stunned silence that fell over the group. Before them lay a pool of water so vast and so vividly colored it seemed unreal. A deep sapphire blue center bled into pale turquoise, then into a vibrant green, which in turn faded into brilliant bands of yellow, orange, and fiery red at the edges. It was larger than a football field, steaming gently into the cool mountain air. Jackson frantically set up his heavy, cumbersome camera, knowing that no words could ever do this justice. Moran frantically mixed his paints, trying to capture hues he'd never seen before. The questions must have flooded their minds. What created these colors? Was it mineral deposits? Or was it something else? Something alive? They were unknowingly looking at vast colonies of thermophiles, heat-loving bacteria, a concept that the world of biology wouldn't fully grasp for another century. They were pioneers, not just in geography, but in microbiology, without even knowing it. Everywhere they looked, Yellowstone presented a new paradox. They saw bubbling mud pots, thick and viscous, plopping and burping like a witch's cauldron. They documented fumaroles, vents in the Earth's crust that hissed sulfurous steam, smelling like the gateway to the underworld. The entire region was a living, breathing geothermal laboratory. For Hayden and his team, this was the scientific equivalent of finding El Dorado. Their initial mission was to map and catalog, but it had evolved into something much deeper. They were documenting a dynamic, interconnected system where geology, chemistry, and biology were intertwined in the most spectacular and violent ways. Their detailed notes, sketches, and measurements weren't just for scientific journals. They were building a case. A case that this land was too strange, too valuable, and too scientifically important to be sold off to settlers or developers. They were beginning to realize they hadn't just found a geological curiosity, they had found a world treasure. When the Hayden expedition returned to the east, they didn't just bring back rocks and pressed flowers. They brought back proof. William Henry Jackson's stunning photographs and Thomas Moran's luminous paintings were the crucial evidence. When laid before Congress, these images caused a sensation. For the first time, the politicians and the public could see that the tall tales were true. The sulfurous air, the rumbling ground, the exploding water, it was all real. Hayden's passionate testimony, combined with this irrefutable visual proof, was overwhelmingly persuasive. He argued that this land was a pleasuring ground for the benefit and enjoyment of the people, a place so unique that it belonged to everyone and no one. His vision, born from that first overwhelming encounter with a geyser, led directly to one of the most revolutionary ideas in American history. In less than a year, on March 1, 1872, President Ulysses S. Grant signed the Yellowstone National Park Protection Act. The world's first national park was born. It was a direct result of that one daring expedition, a testament to the power of science to not only help us understand our world, but also to preserve it. The legacy of Hayden and his team isn't just in their maps or reports. It's in every footstep taken on a Yellowstone boardwalk, every gasp at the sight of Old Faithful, and every person who has stood in awe of the Grand Prismatic Spring. So, the next time you see a picture of Yellowstone, remember those first scientists. Remember their courage to step into the unknown, their intellectual rigor in the face of the unbelievable, and their foresight to protect what they found. They went looking for geological data and ended up giving the world one of its greatest gifts. It's a powerful reminder that exploration and preservation go hand in hand, and that sometimes the greatest discoveries are the ones we choose to save for everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you enjoyed this story and want to explore more incredible moments in scientific history, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what other historical expeditions you'd like to learn about. Until next time, stay curious.